The early morning sun cast a soft glow over the Charleston train station as Chizaram stepped aboard the downtown express, her footsteps echoing hollowly against the metal floor. Her thoughts churned like the restless waves of the nearby harbor, memories of Luke's face vivid in her mind, his smile that had once seemed so sincere now tainted with the brush of betrayal. The ache in her heart was palpable, a weight that seemed to drag her down as she found an empty seat by the window. Settling into the cool, full-leather embrace of the train seat, Chizaram gazed out at the familiar sights of her hometown, the historic buildings that lined the streets, the palmetto trees swaying gently in the gentle breeze, each one a silent witness to her inner turmoil. She tried to focus on the rhythm of the train as it lurched forward, the city of Charleston slowly beginning to pass by in a blur of colors and shapes. It wasn't long before the dam holding back her emotions began to crack. A single tear escaped, tracing a path down her cheek, a silent testament to the pain she felt. In the crowded carriage filled with commuters absorbed in their own worlds, she felt strangely alone. Her hands fumbled for a tissue in her purse, but finding none, she used the sleeve of her blouse to dab discreetly at her eyes, desperate not to draw attention to herself. The train clacked rhythmically over the tracks, a lullaby that failed to soothe her troubled soul. The landscapes of Charleston could do little to distract her from the heaviness that sat like a stone in her chest. With each passing moment, the tears seemed to multiply, betraying her composed exterior with the glistening trails they left behind. The train's steady hum served as an incongruous backdrop to the silent drama unfolding within Chizaram. She felt the weight of onlookers' indifference pressing against her as she fought the battle to keep her soul private. But there was one who seemed to stand apart from the rest, a figure whose presence felt oddly comforting in the sea of detachment. "Are you okay?" The question cut gently through the clamor of the carriage, spoken with such softness that it could have been mistaken for part of the ambient noise. It came from a man who had been observing her plight from across the aisle. He leaned forward, his eyes radiating empathy as he offered a gentle smile that seemed to reach out like a lifeline. Chizaram's first instinct was to retreat further into her shell, to guard her pain from this stranger who had dared to penetrate her solitude. Her gaze shifted to him, taking in the warmth that radiated from his expression, which contrasted starkly with the cold glass of the window she'd been using as an escape. She considered his question, feeling the lump in her throat grow heavier. Should she confide in this man, a mere traveler sharing her journey only by chance? With a subtle nod, she acknowledged his concern, her response muted yet laden with layers of unspoken anguish. The simple gesture was an admission, a crack in her armor that allowed the true extent of her distress to seep through the facade of her eyes, which shimmered with unshed tears. His kindness, unexpected and unprovoked, stirred something within her, a sense of connection, however fleeting, in a moment when isolation seemed her closest companion. "Joshua," he said, extending a hand, the fabric of a handkerchief folded neatly between his fingers. "Sometimes it helps to talk about it," he said, his voice calm and reassuring as the train clattered along its tracks. The scent of lavender wafted from the cloth, a soothing contrast to the sterile chill of the carriage air. Chizaram's gaze lingered on the handkerchief for a moment before she accepted it with a tentative hand, her skin brushing against Joshua's in a fleeting connection that seemed to acknowledge the gravity of her sorrow. The softness of the fabric was comforting against her fingertips, and she found herself clutching it like a lifeline. Gratitude etched itself onto her features, the kind gesture piercing through the fog of her distress. She inhaled deeply, the lavender scent mingling with the warmth of human kindness, allowing herself the space to feel a mix of vulnerability and relief, as if the very act of holding the handkerchief was an invitation to unburden her heart. Chizaram's fingers traced the edge of the handkerchief as she gathered the shards of her composure. Outside, the world blurred into streaks of color and light, but inside, time seemed to slow, hinging on her next words. "It's about a man," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Her gaze fixed on the rhythmic dance of trees racing past the window, a silent backdrop to her turmoil. She paused, the quiet hum of the train filling the space between them as she collected the fragments of her story. Someone I thought was different. The words stumbled out, each one heavier than the last. Chizaram couldn't help but glance at Joshua, wondering if her admission sounded as fragile to him as it did to her own ears. Joshua's eyes met hers with an intensity that spoke volumes, his attention undivided as he leaned in, bridging the gap of anonymity. There was no impatience or judgment in his posture, only the steady presence of someone willing to bear witness to her pain. She took a shaky breath and continued, the dam of her emotions cracking open. At first, everything seemed perfect. He was charming, attentive, we shared so many interests.